Okay.
Are we filming?
We just recently started filming. Yes.
What do you want to talk about?
Let's talk about artichoke agriculture.
Artichoke agriculture. I have to tell you, I had never eaten an artichoke before I came to New England.
You don't even have to eat them. It's just fun to say. Artichoke.
Have you eaten one?
Yes. They've all been pickled, and that makes them really delicious. But
Have you taken one that has been dipped into what is it called? In a pot, and then you take it out, and then you take off the leaves one by one, and you eat them?
I can't.
You dip them in butter.
I can't say that I have. What is that? Potbelly. Potbelly sandwich shop. They're like all over the country except New England, funny enough. They put artichokes on some of their sandwiches, and they're delicious.
Really?
Yes.
Well, I'm just telling you, I had one at Carrie's house, and she's like, this is years ago when we first were friends. And she's like,
Friends.
we were really friends.
We'll get into the relationship stuff
Yeah.
later, but
And they dipped it in a pot, or they boiled it, and then they took it out, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do with that? And she said, you eat it, and you pick enough, and you eat them, and you don't eat them like whole. You take off like the meat of the artichoke leaves. You dip it in butter and take off the meat, and it's fantastic.
really,
Yeah, maybe we'll have an artichoke day.
yeah. Okay, next episode, you're gonna bring some artichokes. How about that?
We'll bring some artichokes, and we'll have a great time doing it.
Okay, well, I guess we will not be talking about artichoke agriculture today. What will we be talking about today, Marty?
We're going to be talking about dating.
Yeah,
Dating. And specifically online dating. Well, I don't know. Are we going to talk about specifically online dating? I mean,
I don't know. I guess we could talk about just dating in general. Why not?
it is interesting because I was a dater for many years until I was 29, and maybe until I was 27 technically. Yeah, you've been dating for years, so we have between the two of us quite a lot of experience here in Central Massachusetts dating, and you've taken it on the road, so you have more. Whatever. I think it'll be fun conversation, and as usual, our goal at Chaffin Church this is the Chaffin Church podcast. Did we even say that? This is Ryan. My name is Marty.
This is the Artichoke Agriculture Podcast. Welcome. This is the Chaffin Church Podcast.
Yeah, it's
Sorry
true.
for interrupting.
I did want to say that because we hadn't said it yet.
Yes.
And so, where was I going with this? Where was I going?
You said you're introducing our topic for today.
Yeah.
Actually. Yeah.
And so we have, between the two of us, we have several years of dating prowess. I've been married for actually 16 years to my wife. And so now today we're going to talk about dating online and in person. So it's been a while for me. I'll share some of my stories later. What are you looking for in dating? Like, what is going on in the dating world?
Yeah. So.
And why should it interest us?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to take the collective us you just mentioned as meaning, your typical married person that's listening to this podcast. So please don't shut this off. If you're married and listening to this, I promise. Hopefully, you'll get some stuff out of this.
Yeah.
Because don't forget, single people remember a lot of things that you have forgotten over the years. So let's keep that in mind.
That's good, by the way.
Yeah. So the question you asked, so just a general, what's going on out there. I don't know that I'm qualified to say everything that's going on out there, but I can tell you what's going on with me and dating. So I am a 32-year-old heterosexual male. So I'm a person of privilege, and I think when it comes to dating, I would classify myself as I don't know if I'm not like super cautious. I go on dates, but I don't go on a lot of dates, I would say.
Okay,
And
when
so,
you say super cautious,
yeah.
what do you mean?
Well, I think there exists this spectrum of the amount of risk a person is willing to tolerate when it comes to romantic relationships, right?
Okay.
And I think, some people are just like basically, if almost anyone asked them out, they would just be like, "Sure, I'll go on a date. Why not? Go on a couple dates. Why not? And then other people are more like, well, no, I need to be friends with this person for like years first, or there's definitely some extremes out there.
Okay.
But yeah, I think I would be a little bit more cautious than I would be freewheeling. Um, and so I feel like I feel like what I've learned over the years is that. Because as being in ministry, I've seen a lot of marriages over the years.
Yes.
And I think one thing that I've learned from an outsider's perspective is life is too short to spend the rest of your life with someone that doesn't make you happy. And so,
Really interesting.
yeah. So, and again, you don't want to take that too far. No one's perfect, and so, there's that, and then there's also the concept of like the honeymoon phase. I get all that, but so that's just where my philosophy lies. So all that to say, sorry, I took a long time to premise the answer to that question. Is I'm just I'm a little bit more cautious. I also come to dating from a Christian perspective,
Yes.
and so to some people that means different things, right? Like I think Marty, and maybe we can get into this in a little bit. When you were a young single man, that probably meant something different to you than it does to me. Me being well, compared to where you were, back then, a much more liberal person than where you used to be.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so, so that means sort of different things. But I am right about that, right? Like you're fairly, like dating wise, I'm just talking about dating ideas and everything. You're a fairly conservative person.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
that would be an accurate way to put it. Correct.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I guess what's going on out there. I think in general right now, it's really interesting because during the pandemic, it was super hilarious. Like I have never had more matches on these apps than during the pandemic. Like I think a lot of people got on the dating apps during the pandemic.
Right.
A lot of times, probably just because people were lonely, and I was already on two of them, and I went down to one during the pandemic, and yeah, it was just like I got a lot of matches, and it was funny because pretty much all of them were totally fine with us just matching and just not saying anything to each other. So literally, you match with a person, you have the option to talk to one another, to send each other messages and everything. But it just sort of seemed like there was this collective agreement among, people who, weren't going to be super aggressive out there during the pandemic. That I think it's okay to just match and just not say anything.
Okay.
You know?
So you matched.
Yeah.
describe the matching. Okay. So that means
Yeah.
you had similar interests and similar what?
Yeah. So you can sort of choose. So there are like different areas. Like one of them, for instance, is your political beliefs. Another
Okay.
is your religious beliefs. Then there's like do you want kids even someday?
Okay.
And there's different things that you can put in there, or you don't have to show it on your profile. So there's all sorts of options there, sort of like Facebook, but
Yeah.
and Facebook actually has their own dating service now, which is funny enough. And a lot of married people don't know that because Facebook doesn't even show that option to people who list
does.
themselves as married. Really?
It does. I have, yeah. I increasingly, I have been, and I didn't know it was Facebook's until later on. And come to think of it, I haven't seen it for a little bit. But
Okay.
it was during COVID, though. All of a sudden, I began to see advertisements for dating services in the context of Facebook for love in my 20s. And it had like a 20-year-old female, 30s. And I would just be like, why am I getting this? And honestly, now that I think about it, I did not get those during COVID. Or I only got them.
Or you
during
only
COVID.
got them during
I only
COVID.
got them during COVID.
Yeah.
I haven't
So
seen
maybe
them
there
recently.
was some sort of advertising push at that moment.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, so basically you can choose what you want to list on there, but you can also choose like here's what I'm looking for and here's what I'm not.
Okay.
And so I'm trying to decide if I should name the dating service that I'm just
Why would you not? And that's not a joke, but like, why would you
I
not?
don't know. Like, what if one of the viewers is on there? I don't know. One of the listeners. It's okay. Okay, so yeah.
Have you ever dated someone or ever seen somebody online that you know?
Yes, actually.
Often?
No, not often, but a surprisingly high amount, but not super
Okay.
often. Anyway, so the dating service online dating service that I think is right now for probably people under 40, like just by far the most
Just
popular
Christian
and
mingle.
best is Hinge.
Hinge. Okay.
Hinge. Yeah.
Really?
Yep. Yeah. And so, yeah, so basically you get to decide, what you list on your profile, what you're looking for, along with some photos. And so then it's basically like a Tinder-like sort of thing after that. You swipe left for, the people you don't want to match with. You swipe right for the people that you do. And then if they also swipe right on you, you will match. And that's where that term comes from. So if you ever hear someone say that, that's usually sort of what they're referring to.
So you both swipe right, and then so that's what you mean when you say you both are okay with doing that and not communicating necessarily with one another. Okay.
Yeah. So during the pandemic, usually before the pandemic, you would match, and typically, and this is still a part of our culture today. Even with egalitarianism and everything, men are expected to sort of like make the first move, send the first message, do that kind of thing, right?
Okay.
And so, but then if you matched with someone and everything, sometimes the woman in that relationship would send the first message anyway. Because they're like, what is this guy doing? He's just not messaging me. But during COVID, like no one was messaging. I think it was almost like we were all sort of like squirrels sort of gathering food for the winter. We were sort of like we're all just like, yeah, like, hey, you look awesome, but we'll just like save this for later. We can always go on a date when the pandemic is over, sort of thing. And so now I just feel like everyone has like hundreds of matches just sort of saved up, and
Wow.
people don't know what to do with all of them. It's a really funny thing that is all happening the way it is. So I think again, to get back to your original question, I think what's happening right now is a lot of the more aggressive and risk-taking people have long ago already started getting back into going on dates and
Yep.
resuming their typical dating lives. And I think you're starting to see now a lot of the more cautious people are starting to get out there again, and because it's sort of like the middle of the summer right now, and so
Now's the time.
yeah, now's the time. So.
So, okay. How many years would you say you've online dated?
I mean, if we're just counting the years that I have had a profile in online dating apps, probably 10 years.
10 years? Okay.
Yeah.
A more specific and important question. Do you have I'm going to use this word, I don't want it to scare you, a philosophy of dating where you've thought through, like, here are some boundaries, here are some things in regards to online dating specifically? Like you were talking about earlier, like how some people are, during COVID, there were different rules.
Right.
Do you have rules set up for yourself as a Christian, also privileged young man, that you kind of have thought through?
Yeah, I mean, so I struggle to take dating advice sometimes from people who are not on the online dating world, because like it's funny, like I don't know, like I might be getting coffee with somebody who got married young, or just never, or is older and just never really got into that whole scene.
Yeah. Yep.
And I'll be on my phone just messaging someone on one of these apps, and they'll be like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I'll be like, "Oh yeah, I'm just messaging this girl." And they're like, "Oh, like, can I see?" And I'm like, "Okay." And
They have said, "Can I see?"
yeah, sure. So and I'll let them just see the profile, and they'll be like, "Oh my goodness, like you have to like be with this girl, like she looks awesome, and I think like, because the problem with dating a lot of the time before online dating, it was a numbers problem, as in I don't have access to enough potential romantic partners
Yep.
to find what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And so the strategy would be, okay, I got to go out to bars, or I got to go out to these events, or I have to expand my group of friends and go out and do this and do that.
Yeah.
So online dating is different. So one of the rules is, for me anyway, I have to have some sort of like wow factor. Like if there's no like wow or anything like that, it's like, again,
so good.
You have so much access in this online
Yeah.
sphere to more. We've all heard the phrase, "There's more fish in the sea," right?
Yes.
And with online dating, that is actually true. Like there are more people out there. There's a lot more, right? So,
Wow.
And by the way, I just want to mention this. If you are an older single person, which is becoming increasingly common, like
Yeah.
in today's world, like it's very, very common to be older and single. Now, I mention Hinge because I'm a younger person, but there, like eHarmony and Match are two services that older singles, I have seen people have success with that before. And so if you are an older person listening today and you're single or whatever, or if you know someone in that category that you'd like to, encourage or whatever, go check out Match or eHarmony, because that's a really cool thing. I think a lot of older singles are a little bit intimidated by the online dating scene, and but I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah.
So back to the question. Yeah, I think so. One of my rules is I have to be wowed, because again, the numbers game is, or at least the overall number of potential matches is no longer a problem if you're on the right dating apps.
Right. Okay.
You know, so
So you're on Hinge, and how many wows would you say that you've had?
Now here's the thing. A wow might only come from my end, right? I might
Correct.
say wow and swipe right, but the amount of times that wow woman also swipes right is even less often, right?
Right,
And
okay.
so you know, like in a typical day, I'll do about 10 minutes of swiping. Now, that doesn't sound like much in some ways, but think about it. You are looking at your phone screen straight for 10 minutes, and I want to say it's about 5 to 10 seconds per profile that you're looking at. You can't put much information on there, so don't think I'm a raging jerk just looking at it for 5 or 10 seconds. Like, they purposely make it so that you're not overthinking things. They don't want you to overthink, right?
Okay.
Because it's about an initial impression, and so yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, I guess you could do the math there.
Okay, so when I dated
Yeah.
in a kind of, you know, in a conservative culture, right? And we talked about that earlier. I had there were general some spiritual guidelines as well.
Right.
Right, and you had just mentioned earlier that you might not have those same.
Right.
Would you say you have any?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, first of all, I generally look to date women who explicitly state on their profile that they are Christian. So that's number one. I mean, because, you know, for multiple reasons. I mean, I spend a lot of time at church, right? I'm at church right now. It's a weekday. I don't think a woman who at least did not appreciate my faith would ever be happy being with me because of the amount of time and effort I put in at churches, right? And so, but this is like, church is part of who I am. My faith is a very large like part of who I am, and so, and I think for me, and I know not everyone is this way, but for me, I think it is wise to look for a partner who goes beyond just accepting who you are in that sphere.
Yeah.
But it's also wise to look for someone who is similar or the same, you know, in that respect. And so, and I have long left behind the notion that you know, Christians need to date Christians that are the exact same spiritual maturity level. I don't like the whole unequally yoked thing, which if you're a conservative Christian, you know what that means. But do you just want to quickly, just a 30-second explanation of that idea, just for anyone who doesn't understand?
Yeah, I mean, so Paul talks in the Corinthian letter about that you should be talking about marriage and you should be with somebody. You should be somebody who is equally yoked. He was using an analogy because, and it's a kind of a funny analogy now that I think about it. That in agriculture at that time there were not one but two oxen that were on a yoke, kind of running the, what do they call it?
plow.
Like a plow.
Yeah.
And so both kind of had to be the same weight, kind of had to have the same strength, or else one would get too far ahead, or one, you know, it would be uneven.
The plow would literally turn, and you can imagine you're trying to plow these straight lines in your field, and you get one that's wavy or whatever. I mean, that would be frustrating.
So once again, a lot of times how you view Scripture can be important there. Because that's a really good analogy in general.
Right.
However, there are different ways there are really different ways to view that. And generally speaking, two people, like what you said earlier, you do need somebody who appreciates the fact that you love and are a part of a church. And I mean, how many times have I seen people come to church on their own, and the husband or the wife can't stand the fact that they come and they're part of it. So eventually they stop going. And so there are some real positive things about that, but there are different ways to interpret it as well.
Right. So when I bring up that unequally yoked idea, that's what I'm referring to, because in conservative Christian culture, that is like really, especially with like purity culture, and I don't think we even have time today to like get into purity culture, what that totally means, but
oh yes, we do.
Within purity culture, the whole idea of being unequally yoked, that is one of the main pieces of supporting evidence for that entire subculture that people use to support it. And so so for me, like, that's one of my rules is on faith. I also I personally, I just probably popped your eardrums there. I personally am a pretty liberal guy. Well, I guess I'm not even that liberal comparatively, but in the Christian world, I'm considered probably a raging liberal to some people, and so I don't want to disappoint any women that I'm not wearing a Trump hat or whatever it is the conservatives are doing these days. I'm not going to be that guy, and I think most, again, it's a similar concept. Could I be with a conservative woman? Probably. We could probably make it work, but there would be a lot of frustration, a lot of times we're going to butt heads and disagree, and so again, you're thinking, so I'm thinking far ahead. If you're looking at it by a certain metric, but I'm 32, like I'm ready to be married. I know what I want, and so I think it's sort of okay to just to be specific,
Yes.
And I don't think I'm overly that way. And actually, Marty and I used to have this running joke. Do you remember what it was?
Yeah.
So there was this old movie in the 90s called So I Married an Axe Murderer. And at the beginning of the movie, it's Michael Myers is the main character in it. And Marty and this guy we used to know, Billy, they quoted this movie so much that I had to go and watch it, because they quoted it so much, and it really was hilarious. So if you haven't seen that movie, please watch it. But one of the things they used to say to me especially when I talked about, like, if I went on a date and I didn't like the person for any reason, they were joking most of the time, although I probably did at some point dislike some woman for some ridiculously small thing. But in the movie, and this is what they would compare me to, Michael Myers, he claims that he's in a poetry slam contest of some sort, and he writes a poem about how this woman stole his cat and smells exactly like chicken soup. Is that right? Am I getting that right?
She smelled just like chicken soup. I can't be with her. That's literally what, it's so good.
So,
yes.
So Marty and Billy used to, anytime I would talk about, hey, I didn't, this didn't work out, and they would be like, she smelled just like chicken soup.
Now, were you a part, like, would you say you dated offline, or has online always been?
I would say, let me think here. I think it's about half and half.
So what have been the differences between the two?
Well, usually when I meet someone not on a dating app, I have some sort of connection to that person. And so in some ways it's more risky, right? Because if things don't work out with this person, there, when breakups happen, even if you weren't like officially dating,
Yeah.
that's like radioactive, right? It just radiates out and it affects people, and
Yeah.
so if that close connection, right? Like for instance, if I were to date someone who someone at this church set me up with, right? And then
Right.
things didn't work out with the person they set me up with, depending on the way that goes, right? Like, is the person from this church that set us up, are they going to be mad at me? Are they going to be mad at the other person? Do I want to be the cause of either of those things? And so,
I asked the young man. I think at the time he was 16 or 17. He was in high school, and his name escapes me right now. But when I asked him I was like, "Hey, are you dating anyone?" And he's like, "No." I asked him specifically, "Are you dating anyone from your school?" And he said, "Absolutely not." And he goes to this monstrous school. I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "If you date somebody in your school and that goes bad, you're finished." I'm like, "What?"
well, that's how online dating has sort of changed. Well, and not just online dating as in online dating specific apps, but you don't even need to go on a dating app specifically. You can meet people through just general social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, whatever.
Yeah.
And things can start that way. So that young man, yeah, I especially now I'm a millennial, but especially in Gen Z culture, I think that's becoming even a bigger influence. And so like it used to be that online couples, and I always love this. So I list on my online dating profile, and they give you like 3 spaces to say something, and it's usually like 3 different prompts that they give you, and then you write something in response to the prompt. So one of the prompts is, I'm totally willing to ... That's one of the prompts. And so one of the things I say is, I'm totally willing to make up a lie about how we met, right? So because meeting somebody online, it's not really a romantic story, Like, so you could make up something together as a couple about how you met. What better bonding activity is there other than creating some fiction about how you met?
There has to be. Oh, you've got mail. There has to be some sort of beautiful story that can happen with online dating.
I'm not saying they're not beautiful. I'm saying they're not classically romantic.
Okay,
Like,
all right, understood.
Like You've Got Mail, right? Can you think of any other movie? And You've Got Mail, let's think about it. That was really only because it was a super novel idea in the 90s.
Yeah.
Right? There have not been many modern love stories that I can think of that were based on online dating.
No, you're right.
It's not a very sexy idea,
Yeah.
the meeting somebody online necessarily. So, yeah, that's one thing that I do is I list that I'm willing to lie, and my hope is that that's charming and that it's funny, and so hopefully it works. I don't know.
And some people apparently like it because they have swiped right for you, Ryan Thompson.
Yes.
Okay, so kind of landing.
I feel like I know maybe you wanted to move on to the next topic, but can we just get a few minutes more of your story? Because I feel like I did a lot of talking there, and I want to hear more about.
I have no problem with you talking.
Young Marty Holman.
Well, so I will say this. I came in on the very early stages of online dating. And when I say that, I mean one date. One date. ChristianCafe.com.
Okay.
And so from
You know what? While you're talking, I'm going to be rude, and I'm going to be on my iPad seeing if this site still exists.
seeing if it still exists, I hope that I do not have an account on it at this point. It would have a picture of me from about 2002, and
It still
it
exists.
still exists for
It's
free
still
apparently. I wonder. Yeah, that's interesting. So I had actually met Carrie, and we were friends.
How did you meet Carrie?
I met Carrie at church.
At church.
So Carrie's dad emailed me.
Oh man, really?
It's true.
I don't think I know this part of the story.
Emailed me one night, and it was Saturday night, and he emailed me and asked me if we had any drums, if we had drums at our church, if we needed anyone to play. I said yes. I was the worship leader at the time. I said yes. We did have drums, and I'd love him to come in to listen to our band and talk to him, and we could have a little quick. What is it called?
Tryout.
Tryout.
Yeah.
And so they came in. He came in with his family, and she was a part of that family. Now, she actually disagrees with this. And she knows her part of the story better than me, right? She says that she actually came separate from her dad, and they happened to arrive there because her and her friend Sarah had gone to a different church in the area. I just say it because we're in the same churches. Had gone to Holden Chapel.
Okay.
And they had gone to like a gathering, a singles gathering, and somebody had mentioned Fellowship Church there. I'm sorry, Wachusett Valley at the time.
Wachusett Valley
Wachusett
Baptist.
Valley.
Yeah.
Christian church.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah.
And so they showed up, and she walked in, and I was very friendly. And I talked to Tom, and that worked out well. He played the drums, and I got talking to her. She was younger than me, and we became really close friends, and we started a group, like we essentially started like this singles hangout where we had like, and it wasn't official, it wasn't like we didn't have an official name, or I guess eventually we did a little Bible study, but we just hung out all the time, this group of people. And it was a great time. And then after like 6 months, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna ask this girl out. We were close. We talked all the time, and you know what? There was a reason I waited 6 months, and the reason was because she went out on one of my close friends liked her a lot.
Oh.
Yeah. And great dude. I'm not going to say his name. I'm not going to call him out, but liked her a lot. And they went on a date. Now, during that time, her and I were super close, and she was calling me, we were talking like every night, and she was telling me, like, I don't think this is going to work out. This is not the guy for me. Like, we had a fun time, but I'm not really about it. She wasn't disparaging of him or anything. It was just, I don't think this is the guy for me.
Right.
And inside I'm going, yeah. But I had to wait for that a little bit.
Yeah, I know the man for you. I know him very well.
And then he started dating somebody else. So that left it kind of an open, like, so I asked her out, to which she said no. And
by the way, I should be acting very surprised. I've heard this part of the story before.
Right.
But usually we should be surprised, right? Because
Right.
the way the story is going, it feels like
Yes.
that is the natural progression of events.
so I asked her out again a short time. Now, what was happening when she said no, she said, like, I was obviously hurt by her saying no. We were, when I say we're close, I mean, we did everything together. We led these group hangouts. We talked every night. And so I'm like, oh, okay. Okay. And so I had a hard time like talking to her. I kind of told her, I'm going to need to back away a little bit. She's like, no. I'm like, well, that's not your decision. Your decision was no. I'm going to need to back away, which I didn't do a very good job. So I asked her out again. She said no. I'm like,
Starting to see a pattern.
I'm
here.
starting to see a pattern here. But at this point, I'm like we're close. Like, I don't know what I can do here, but this is going to be a problem because I am really into you and you clearly are not into me. Then her best friend asked me out.
Oh.
Her best friend sent me a text. It said, if I asked you out on a date, what would you say? Because I would like to date you. And I said, well, let's talk about that at a Starbucks. So we met at a Starbucks. And inside, I knew exactly what I was doing because I wanted to see what her reaction was. And it wasn't good. She was like, what? She asked you out? And that was what I wanted to see. That is exactly what I wanted to see. Now, at the same time, it was clear she wasn't going to say yes at this point. So I essentially started dating online. Like I started looking around on ChristianCafe.com, which is clearly still a thing.
So this is where your story comes in.
And this is where that story comes in. And so I had an account or whatever.
Yeah.
And I got a date. I was supposed to go on a date. And so of course I was like, should I do this? And Carrie's mom, Angela, our treasurer here at the church, was like, yeah, Marty, you should. And she said it right in front of Carrie. Carrie was like, yeah, you should. And I'm like, I'm going on a date. So we went on a date, had a great time. It was a great time, great girl. And then it came down to a group gathering on July 4th. This story is going long, I'm sorry. It came down to a group gathering on July 4th. All of our group was going to go to the July 4th in Boston.
Okay.
And I had dated this girl twice. And the question was I going to take her to this gathering? I ended up doing this. This is the part I don't know that you know. Right? Have you heard this story?
No.
There was drama. And there was a few reasons why there was drama. One of the reasons were, so this was a Christian group. They were very conservative. They were, right? And the girl who I had dated a couple of times, she came, I don't know how else to say this, but it makes for a great story. She came and it was going to be a hot day. And so she dressed like it was going to be a hot day.
Oh.
The girls in our crew were ticked. And not necessarily Carrie. She didn't really say much, but all the other girls, and they completely dissed her, didn't talk to her.
Wow.
These are people who were my closest friends. I mean, the guys were like, "What's up, Mark?" It was they treated her well and all that.
Yeah.
Anyways, so that night, I can remember this, and I still have this. That night we got back. We all met at the church there on Bullard Street, and I dropped her off. She lived in Watertown, I believe.
Okay.
And Carrie and I talked in the lobby on Bullard Street. And we talked until 4 in the morning.
Wow.
And she said, and she wrote out a list of changes that I needed to make in my life.
What?
She would be horrified if I told her. Like, things that, like, she saw, like, listen, this like, problems with that particular day. I had a great time that day. But, like, things, like, I had a close friend named Ruben who was fairly immature, and when I was around him, I tended to do fairly immature things. She talked about that, and we worked, and we talked about this till like 4 in the morning. Anyways, our relationship, because we kept talking, our relationship just kept growing. And I ended up, that may be the first time I've ever told that particular part of the story. I ended up asking her a third time over a month later. So my relationship with this particular girl who was the only online date I ever had,
Right.
It dwindled, mostly because I realized at that point I liked her a lot. She was a great girl, but I loved Carrie. And I was having, like, it just was different. Like,
Right.
And I knew that she was a great person. She was funny and good conversation too, and attractive and all that. And I just knew, though, that I was in love with Carrie, and she kept saying no. So over a month later,
It's like such a tortured soul story.
in early August 2003, we were sitting in what we called the fellowship hall at the time, which ended up being our children's wing years later. And we were sitting down in a chair, and I asked her out for the third time, and she said, Marty, you and I will never, ever meet.
See, every time I hear this story, I keep forgetting how many times it was she said no, and I always expect on the third time, like, oh yeah, this is the time she said yes. And then it's like, oh crap, no, it is not.
No.
It is not the time she said yes.
No, it was rough. It was rough on my psyche. I literally got up and I walked out of the room.
Wow.
And I was like, I cannot talk to her anymore. Like, this is where we're at. She wants to talk to me and she wants to be my friend. I'm in love with her, and we're at an impasse. Like, she doesn't want to date me, and that's okay. That's her life. And so that's where we were at. And so the next week, she got a group of people together, and because I wasn't talking to her, she got someone to get me out of my apartment, and they came in and they actually redid my whole apartment. Okay. Yeah. And so I called her, I said thank you. And I sent her some flowers. I sent her 10 white roses and 2 red roses as a thank you for doing that. My parents were coming, and I was being ordained at the end of August in 2003. And now going on almost 11 months since I met her. And she's like, I can't wait to meet your parents in a conversation. And I said, why do you think that, why would you want to meet my parents? Like, this is not a thing that should be happening. Here's and I was just being a jerk. here's my friend, Carrie, like. And that night, I was like, okay, whatever. That night, we were gonna go meet my parents. We were gonna go out to eat, and it was her and I, and my parents were coming in later. We were sitting. We walked over to Mayo School in Holden,
Which was right next to
to where I lived.
Yeah.
And she was on a swing, and she said, she gave out of the blue. We weren't talking about it. She brought up two objections she had to us dating. And one was our difference in backgrounds, spiritual backgrounds, equally yoked.
Equally yoked.
And I mean, so we were both evangelical, but we just came from two different branches. And the other one was the fact that I was a bit older. Oh, and there was a third. She didn't know if she could be a pastor's wife. Right?
That's a big one.
Or like wanted to delve into that. So I said, I can't, we've talked about this. I can't answer the questions for you. So we talked a little bit more, and finally that night, August 29th, 2003, I said, I'm going to ask you this one more time, and it will be the last time that these words come out of my mouth. Would you be my girlfriend? I just said it that way, which I'd never done before. And she said, yes, absolutely. And that is the story of my online dating time and my time with Carrie.
I mean, such a good story. Like so many like twists and turns. Well, it's linear in that she said no so many times, but the resolution is good. Satisfying.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is all of those girls who were her friends actually ended up walking away and not being her friends anymore after that. It was as if they turned their venom from that girl to me. It was totally weird. She's had some conversation with them, but for the most part, most of them walked away. Not in the whole group, because there ended up being 3 couples married out of that group.
Dating and breakups are both radioactive.
Radioactive.
Some people can handle it, some people can't. Yeah.
So let's bring this to a close, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, we've been talking a lot about dating, and it's so different now. And if you're a Christian, we're obviously called to live in certain ways, and you personally and as a community. And so, Ryan, what is a piece of advice you would give to somebody as a single young follower of Jesus, somebody else who is dating? What is a piece of advice that you would give? Not that you're so bold as you're going to write a book on it, but what is something as you're walking along, something that you would say, hey, you're young, you're 18, 19, you're about to walk on this journey. What is something, or you're doing this again after a divorce or whatever?
Yeah, I think wherever you are at, so just sort of a universal way to frame this is in terms of your faith, do not let anyone try to tell you that that singleness is not okay, or that being single but wanting to be married or dating is not okay. I see that out there as well. Like I see, some people they overly value being single, like to the point where, if you're single and you want to be with someone, you somehow have to simultaneously want to be dating but also not at the same time. They're like, oh, the only way you're going to find it is when you give up trying. And I'm sorry, but if you're one of those people that's saying that, please stop. You're not some, Confucian monk. Like that doesn't make sense. Please stop saying it. But yeah, so wherever you're at, being married is good. This is clear in scriptures. Being married is good.
Yes.
But also clear in the scriptures, being single is good.
Yeah.
It's a good thing. And so I guess the thing that I've been learning and that I guess in a lot of ways I'm still learning is we need to learn to be okay with where we're at, but learn that it's okay to have desires for the future, to want things. So it's great to be happy where you're at. It's great to have desire to be somewhere else. Like, these things are good and okay and healthy. And God is not only okay with those things, but I think He supports us all in it. So just don't be timid. Like, if you're Christian and you're praying about these things, if you're at that place in your faith, keep praying about them and be bold about the things that you ask God, but also thanking God for where you're at as well. So I guess that's my advice.
Nice. I would say that the biggest thing, like, everyone seems to want to be where they're not. Right? And everyone's, married people say, oh, you got to get married. And most married people don't even want to be married anymore. like it's really, it's so much divorce and so much hardship. And one piece of advice I would give is that no matter where you're at, that you are consistently learning, and you actually used this word earlier in our conversation before we got on the microphone, is you would learn to self-sacrifice. That self-sacrificial love is key to any and all relationships. That if you're single, you would be practicing self-sacrificial love for that time or for not that time, but you're consistently practicing that. If you're married and you are not promoting and living out self-sacrificial love, I got news for you. It is a matter of time, unless you live with a doormat. And because that's what marriage is about. It's about compromise. It's about stepping aside. It's about loving the person and loving the people more than you love yourself. And so I think self-sacrificial love is so important as a single person, as a married person. Getting on that. If you don't have, I would not even date, online or otherwise, unless you are working. You don't have to have it down. Nobody has it down. But unless you are working on that, don't do it.
Are you the person that the person you're looking for is looking for? This is something Marty said. He was actually quoting someone else at the time, but it's a really good question. Ask yourself this question. Are you the person that the person you're looking for is looking for? I know it's a little bit of a Russian nesting doll, but go with it. Go with it. Are you the person that you are looking for is looking for?
That's good. That's our time for today. Hey, thanks for being here. Thanks for checking it out. As we usually say, please rate, subscribe, review, rate us. Let us know that you've checked us out, and we're thankful that we get to be here.
Can I ask too, if you're watching this on YouTube or if you're listening to the podcast and you're not driving, we would like to hear, you don't have to type the whole thing up, but we'd like to hear a little short summary, if you are a married person, of how you met your spouse, or if you're not married, maybe post something that you're learning about dating and relationships right now as well. That would be kind of a cool thing to comment.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Comment on that on Facebook or YouTube. YouTube specifically, I've seen that our subscriptions are going up, so that's pretty awesome. And if come and check us out too at Chaffin Church. We are there every Sunday at 10 a.m. You can also watch all of our podcasts at chaffin.church. Church. And if we've helped you in any way, feel free to give and share what God has given you. And that would be awesome. You can do that at chaffin.church/giving. And that'll help us to continue to do what we do as a church. So, that's what I got. That's our good news for today. Now go
and give some out.
Peace.